The doctor tried 4 times to save the dying billionaire. 4 times he failed. The man's face turned from red to purple to gray. His eyes were rolling back. Everyone watched in horror as he collapsed. Brain damage happens in 4 minutes. Death in 6. He had 30 seconds left. That's when a 26-year-old waitress pushed through the crowd and whispered, "I know another way." What happened next went viral worldwide, changed modern medicine forever, and proved that sometimes the oldest wisdom is the strongest medicine. This is the true story of the night a forgotten Chinese technique saved a Japanese billionaire's life, and how that single moment sparked a revolution that would save thousands more. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear will change how you see your own grandparents' wisdom forever. Welcome to Voice of Granny. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you a story that will change the way you think about the wisdom of our grandparents. It's a story about a single moment when everything hung in the balance, when modern knowledge failed, and when ancient wisdom became the difference between life and death. Picture this: the Golden Lotus, one of Chicago's most beautiful restaurants. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, soft piano music floating through the air, and the gentle clink of expensive wine glasses. It was the kind of place where powerful people came to celebrate, to make deals, to feel important. On this particular evening, everything seemed perfect. Until it wasn't. Her name was Rachel Torres, 26 years old, with tired eyes and hands that never stopped moving. She was a nursing student at Northwestern University, but nursing school doesn't pay the bills. So every evening, she put on her black uniform, tied her dark hair back, and became invisible. That's what servers are in places like the Golden Lotus. Invisible. People look right through you as if you're just part of the furniture. Rachel had been working double shifts for months. Morning classes, afternoon study sessions, evening service, and late-night shifts at a 24-hour diner when she needed extra money. Her student loans were crushing her. Her tiny apartment in a rough neighborhood cost too much. But she kept going because she had a dream. She wanted to be a nurse. She wanted to help people, just like her grandfather had taught her. Her grandfather, Wei Chun, had passed away 2 years ago, but his voice still echoed in her mind every single day. He'd come to America from a small village in rural China, carrying nothing but his memories and his knowledge. Back in his village, there were no hospitals, no ambulances, no emergency rooms. When someone was hurt or sick, the village had to save them with what they knew. With wisdom passed down through hundreds, maybe thousands of years. Wei had taught Rachel so many things. How to treat burns with honey and herbs. How to stop bleeding with pressure and elevation. How to bring down a fever with cool compresses and patience. And yes, how to save someone who was choking. It was different from what they taught in her nursing classes. The technique was old, almost forgotten, something his own grandfather had taught him in that Chinese village so long ago. "Rachel," he would say, his weathered hands demonstrating on her stuffed animals when she was young. "Modern medicine is wonderful, but our ancestors survived for thousands of years without hospitals. They knew things. Important things. Never forget the old ways, my granddaughter. Someday they might save a life." She'd never imagined that someday would come so soon, or that the life would belong to one of the most powerful men in Chicago. That evening, Rachel was assigned to the private dining room. Table 7. She'd been nervous all day because she knew who was dining there. Kenji Yamamoto. Everyone in Chicago knew that name. He owned Yamamoto Technologies, one of the biggest robotics and artificial intelligence companies in the world. His innovations had changed manufacturing, healthcare, and transportation. He was worth billions. His face appeared on magazine covers and news programs. But to Rachel, he was just another customer. Another person who wouldn't notice her, wouldn't see her, would maybe leave a decent tip if she was lucky. She watched from the corner as Kenji Yamamoto ate his dinner. He was 58 years old, with silver gray hair and an elegant navy suit that probably cost more than her entire year of tuition. He was dining with business associates, laughing at something someone said, completely relaxed. He looked happy, successful, untouchable. He cut into his steak. Prime ribeye, cooked medium rare, the most expensive item on the menu. He took a bite, and then everything changed. At first, no one noticed. Kenji's hand went to his throat. His eyes widened. He tried to cough, but nothing came out. No sound. No air. Just silence. Terrible, suffocating silence. His business partners noticed. One of them stood up quickly. "Kenji? Kenji, are you all right?" But Kenji wasn't all right. His face was turning red, then purple. He was clutching his throat with both hands now, his eyes wild with panic. He was choking. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Someone screamed for help. The manager came running. And then, thank God, 2 doctors who were dining nearby rushed over. They were confident, professional, trained. One of them, Dr. William Patterson, was actually the head of surgery at Chicago General Hospital. "Step back, everyone," Dr. Patterson commanded. He positioned himself behind Kenji and wrapped his arms around him. The Heimlich maneuver. Rachel had learned it in her nursing program. It was supposed to work. It always worked. Dr. Patterson thrust upward once. Nothing. Twice. Nothing. 3 times. Still nothing. Kenji's face was getting darker. His movements were becoming weaker. He was dying right there in front of everyone, and the Heimlich maneuver wasn't working. Rachel stood frozen, her serving tray trembling in her hands. She could see the panic in Dr. Patterson's eyes as he tried a 4th time. Failed again. Someone was calling 911, but everyone knew the ambulance wouldn't arrive in time. Kenji Yamamoto had maybe 30 seconds left before his brain started dying from lack of oxygen. And that's when Rachel heard her grandfather's voice, clear as if he was standing right beside her. "The old way, Rachel. Remember the old way." Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her hands were shaking. Every logical part of her brain was screaming at her to stay back, to let the doctors handle it, to not interfere. She was just a nursing student, just a waitress. What did she know? But her grandfather's voice was stronger than her fear. She set down her tray, and she started walking toward table 7. You have to understand what Rachel was risking in that moment. Everything. Her job, her reputation, maybe even her future career as a nurse. Who was she to interrupt trained doctors? Who was she to think she knew better than the head of surgery at one of Chicago's best hospitals? But when she looked at Kenji Yamamoto's face, she didn't see a billionaire. She didn't see a powerful CEO or a famous innovator. She saw a human being. A man who was terrified. A man who was dying. And she saw her grandfather's face, remembered his words, felt his hands guiding hers through the technique he'd taught her on their back porch in the summer heat. "Excuse me," Rachel said quietly, pushing through the crowd. No one heard her. Everyone was focused on Dr. Patterson, who was trying the Heimlich for the 5th time, desperation creeping into his professional demeanor. "Excuse me," Rachel said louder. "Please, I can help." Dr. Patterson glanced at her, his face red with exertion and frustration. "Miss, please step back. This is a medical emergency." "I know," Rachel said, her voice steadier now. "But there's another way. An old technique. Please let me try." The manager of the Golden Lotus appeared at her elbow, his face pale with panic. "Rachel, what are you doing? Get back to the kitchen right now." But Rachel didn't move. She locked eyes with Dr. Patterson. "Please. He's running out of time." Maybe it was the certainty in her voice. Maybe it was the fact that nothing else was working. Or maybe it was just desperation. But Dr. Patterson stepped aside. 30 seconds, he said. "If this doesn't work, I'm taking over again." Rachel's hands were shaking as she moved to Kenji's side. He was barely conscious now, his eyes rolling back, his body starting to go limp. She had one chance. One moment to honor her grandfather's memory, to prove that the old ways still mattered. She didn't stand behind Kenji like Dr. Patterson had done. Instead, she gently but firmly guided him forward, bending him at the waist until his upper body was almost parallel to the floor. Around her, she heard gasps. Someone said, "What is she doing? That's not right." But Rachel blocked it all out. She positioned herself at Kenji's side, one hand supporting his chest, the other raised high. And then she heard her grandfather's voice again, as clear as the day he'd taught her. 5 strikes, Rachel. Heel of your hand between the shoulder blades. Firm. Sharp. Let gravity help you. The old way works because it trusts the body and the earth working together. Rachel struck once. The sound echoed through the silent restaurant. Nothing happened. Twice. Still nothing. Kenji's body was getting heavier in her arm. 3 times. Someone in the crowd sobbed. 4 times. Rachel's own vision was blurring with tears. Had she been wrong? Had she just wasted precious seconds on an old folk remedy while a man died? But then she heard her grandfather's final instruction. The 5th strike, Rachel. This one is different. Harder. More focused. You combine the downward force with an inward angle. You must believe it will work. Rachel raised her hand one last time. She took a breath. and she struck with everything she had, combining the downward motion with that slight inward push, just as Wei had taught her. For one horrible heartbeat, nothing happened. And then Kenji Yamamoto lurched forward with a violent, gasping cough. The piece of steak shot from his mouth and hit the floor with a wet sound that was the most beautiful thing Rachel had ever heard. Air rushed into Kenji's lungs. He gasped, coughed, gasped again. Each breath was ragged and desperate, but it was breath. It was life. The restaurant exploded with sound. People were crying, shouting, applauding. Dr. Patterson immediately began checking Kenji's vital signs, his professional mask back in place, but Rachel could see the shock in his eyes. Kenji slowly straightened, supported by Rachel and the doctor. His face was returning to its normal color, though his expensive suit was rumpled and his hair was disheveled. He looked more human than he probably had in years. Vulnerable. Grateful. Alive. He turned to look at Rachel, and his dark eyes filled with tears. "You," he managed, his voice hoarse and broken. "You saved my life." Rachel felt her knees go weak. The adrenaline was draining from her body, leaving her shaky and lightheaded. My grandfather taught me. It's an old Chinese technique. I didn't know if it would work." Kenji reached out and took both of her hands in his. They were trembling, just like hers. This man who commanded boardrooms and negotiated billion-dollar deals was shaking like a leaf. "What's your name?" he asked. "Rachel. Rachel Torres." "Rachel Torres," Kenji repeated, his voice full of wonder. "The doctors tried to save me. Trained professionals with all their modern knowledge. But it was you, eh?" He paused, looking at her uniform. "A waitress," Rachel finished quietly. "I'm also a nursing student at Northwestern." "A nursing student," Kenji said, fresh tears spilling down his cheeks. "Who knew something they didn't. Who honored the wisdom of her grandfather." He pressed her hands to his chest, his heart still racing beneath her palms. "You didn't just save my life, Rachel. You taught me something I'd forgotten. Something I'd spent my whole adult life ignoring." Rachel didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. But she would soon learn that Kenji Yamamoto had his own complicated relationship with ancient wisdom, with cultural heritage, with the teachings of his own ancestors, and that this moment would change both of their lives forever. The ambulance arrived, sirens wailing. Paramedics rushed in with equipment and urgent questions. But before they could take him away, Kenji pulled out his wallet with shaking hands and pressed a business card into Rachel's palm. "Call me tomorrow," he said urgently. "Please. This conversation isn't over." Rachel didn't sleep that night. How could she? She sat in her cramped apartment, her two roommates blessedly asleep for once, and stared at the business card. Kenji Yamamoto, Chief Executive Officer, Yamamoto Technologies. And below that, a personal cell phone number written in his own hand. But it wasn't just the card keeping her awake. It was what happened after the ambulance took Kenji away. Someone in the restaurant had filmed everything. The whole incident. Rachel didn't know who, didn't know when. But within an hour, the video was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The hashtag that was trending worldwide was Chinese rescue. Rachel watched the shaky footage on her roommate's laptop, her stomach churning. There she was, pushing past the doctors, bending Kenji forward, delivering those 5 precise strikes. The audio captured everything. Kenji's desperate silence, the crowd's horrified gasps, and then his miraculous cough as air rushed back into his lungs. The comments were overwhelming. Thousands of them, multiplying by the minute. "This is incredible. Why don't they teach this in medical school? Ancient Chinese medicine saving lives in the modern world. This is what cultural preservation looks like." That positioning was genius. Using gravity to assist. Why didn't the Heimlich work? But there were critical comments too. Harsh ones. She got lucky. She could have injured him seriously. Where's her medical license? This is dangerous. The Heimlich is the proven method. This is just folk medicine that happened to work. Rachel felt sick. She wasn't ready for this. She was nobody. A tired nursing student working tables to survive. She wasn't a hero. She'd just done what her grandfather taught her. Her phone started ringing at 6 in the morning. Unknown numbers, over and over. Finally, she answered one. "Rachel Torres? This is Jennifer Wu from Good Morning America. We'd love to have you on the show tomorrow to discuss the rescue technique you used. The whole country is talking about you." Rachel hung up without answering. But the calls kept coming. The New York Times, CNN, The Today Show, local news stations, medical journals. Everyone wanted to talk to her, to interview her, to understand what she'd done. At 7:30, her phone rang again. This time, the caller ID said K, Yamamoto. Her heart jumped into her throat. "Hello," she answered, her voice rough from lack of sleep. "Rachel." Kenji's voice was still hoarse, but full of energy. "I hope I didn't wake you. I couldn't wait any longer to talk." "I haven't slept," Rachel admitted. "The video. Everyone's calling me. I don't know what to do." "I know," Kenji said gently. "The same thing is happening to me. But Rachel, this is important. What you did last night wasn't just about saving my life. You proved something the world needs to understand." Rachel heard papers rustling on his end. "I spent the night thinking. About my father, about my grandfather, about everything I've lost chasing success in America." "I don't understand," Rachel said. Kenji took a shaky breath. "My family is from Kyoto, Japan. My grandfather was a traditional healer. He knew techniques passed down through generations. Acupressure points, herbal remedies, ancient methods of treating injuries and illness. When I was young, he tried to teach me. But I was embarrassed. I wanted to be modern, American, successful. I rejected it all." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. This sounded so familiar. "I came to America for university," Kenji continued. "I got my engineering degree, started my company, built my empire. I became exactly what I thought I should be. Successful. Powerful. American. But I lost something along the way. I lost my connection to where I came from, to the wisdom my grandfather tried to give me. And last night," Rachel whispered, "last night, a nursing student saved my life using the exact kind of traditional knowledge I'd spent 40 years rejecting. The Heimlich maneuver, modern medicine, failed. But your grandfather's ancient Chinese technique worked. Don't you see the irony? The tragedy?" Rachel did see it. She saw it clearly. "My father died 5 years ago," Kenji said, his voice breaking. "I never told him I understood, that I was wrong to dismiss what he tried to teach me. And now," he paused, collecting himself. "Now a stranger has given me a second chance. Not just at life, but at understanding who I really am." "Kenji," Rachel said softly, "I just did what my grandfather taught me. That's all." "That's everything," Kenji corrected. "Your grandfather preserved knowledge that saved my life. How many other people die every year who could be saved if more people knew these techniques? How many grandparents are trying to pass down wisdom while their grandchildren ignore them, just like I did?" Rachel felt something stirring in her chest. A sense of purpose she hadn't felt since her grandfather died. "Rachel, I want to do something," Kenji said. "I want to establish a foundation. A research institute dedicated to documenting and teaching traditional healing techniques before they disappear forever. The Waitress Institute for Cultural Medicine. Named after your grandfather, with your permission." Rachel couldn't breathe. "Named after my grandfather? He saved my life through you," Kenji said simply. "His wisdom, passed down through his hands to yours. That deserves to be honored. That deserves to live forever." "But I'm just a nursing student," Rachel protested. "I don't know how to run an institute." "You know what matters," Kenji said firmly. "You understand the value of this knowledge because you lived it. You honored your grandfather's teachings when everyone else would have dismissed them. That's exactly the perspective this institute needs. I'll handle the money and the logistics. You handle the heart and the wisdom." Rachel looked around her tiny apartment. At her stack of unpaid bills, her secondhand furniture, her pile of nursing textbooks. Then she looked at the photo on her desk. Her grandfather, smiling at her from the frame, his weathered hands folded in his lap. Those hands that had taught her so much. "When do we start?" Rachel heard herself say. "Today," Kenji said. "Can you meet me at my office? I'll send a car. We have important work to do, Rachel. Your grandfather's legacy depends on it." The black car that arrived at Rachel's apartment building 3 hours later felt like something from a dream. Her neighbors stared as a professional driver opened the door for her. Rachel clutched her backpack, filled with her grandfather's journals, old photographs, and handwritten notes about traditional Chinese medicine like a lifeline. Yamamoto Technologies occupied an entire building in downtown Chicago, glass and steel reaching toward the sky. Rachel had walked past it dozens of times, never imagining she'd enter through the private executive elevator. When the doors opened into Kenji's office, Rachel gasped. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the entire city. Lake Michigan sparkled in the distance. But what caught her attention wasn't the view or the expensive furniture. It was the people waiting. Dr. William Patterson stood near the windows, looking considerably more humble than he had at the restaurant. Next to him was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and an air of authority, and a younger woman with a camera slung over her shoulder. "Rachel," Kenji said warmly, dressed in casual clothes now instead of his business suit. The bruising on his throat was visible, dark purple and yellow marks that made Rachel wince. "Thank you for coming. I have some people I want you to meet." Dr. Patterson stepped forward first. "Miss Torres, I owe you an apology. Last night, I dismissed you because you weren't a doctor. I let my training blind me to the possibility that someone else might have knowledge I didn't. That was arrogant, and it almost cost a man his life." Rachel didn't know what to say. This man was famous in Chicago, a brilliant surgeon, and he was apologizing to her? "You were trying to help," Rachel said quietly. "That's what matters." "I was trying to prove I was the expert," Dr. Patterson corrected. "You taught me humility. Now I'd like to learn from you if you'll teach me." The woman with kind eyes stepped forward next. "I'm Dr. Lisa Hamilton, Chief of Emergency Medicine at Chicago General. I've spent the last 12 hours reviewing the footage of your technique and consulting with colleagues around the world. What you did, Rachel, it shouldn't have worked according to our current understanding. But it did. We need to understand why." The younger woman with the camera smiled. "And I'm Iris Park. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I want to tell this story, Rachel. Your grandfather's wisdom, this institute, everything. The world needs to see this." Rachel felt overwhelmed. "I don't understand. Yesterday I was just trying to survive. Now there's a documentary." Kenji guided her to a comfortable chair. "Yesterday you proved that ancient wisdom has modern applications. Today we scale it. Dr. Patterson has agreed to lead medical research into what we're calling the Waitress method. Dr. Hamilton will develop training protocols for emergency responders. Iris will document everything. And you," he smiled, "you'll be the Institute's Director of Traditional Medicine Research." "But I need to finish nursing school," Rachel protested. "I have classes, clinical rotations, my degree." "Already handled," Kenji said gently. "I've spoken with Northwestern. They're creating a special program that will allow you to complete your nursing degree while working with the Institute. Your research will count toward your thesis. You'll graduate with both your degree and real-world experience in cultural medicine preservation." Rachel felt tears starting. "Why are you doing all this?" Kenji sat down across from her, his expression serious. "Because 40 years ago, my grandfather tried to teach me about pressure points that could stop pain, about herbs that could heal wounds, about meditation techniques that could calm panic. I laughed at him. I told him that was old-fashioned nonsense, that America had better ways." He touched his bruised throat. "Last night, modern American medicine failed me. The Heimlich maneuver, performed by one of the best surgeons in Chicago, didn't work. But your grandfather's ancient Chinese technique did. That's not coincidence, Rachel. That's wisdom. Tested over thousands of years, refined through countless lives saved. And we're losing it." Dr. Hamilton nodded. "Every day, elderly people die taking traditional knowledge with them. Immigrants' children reject their parents' teachings, wanting to be American. Indigenous communities lose their healers. It's a tragedy. What we're doing here could change that." "How?" Rachel asked. "We document everything," Kenji explained. "Your grandfather's techniques, yes, but also traditional healing methods from other cultures. Native American medicine, African tribal remedies, Pacific Islander techniques, Japanese healing arts, Indian Ayurvedic practices. We find the elders who still know these things. We record them. We test them scientifically. We teach them. We preserve them. I'm committing $50 million as initial funding," Kenji added. "More if we need it. This is my life's new purpose, Rachel. Money without meaning is just paper. This gives it meaning." The meeting lasted for hours. They discussed research protocols, funding structures, partnerships with universities. Rachel's head spun with the scale of it all. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she looked at her grandfather's photo in her bag and felt his steady presence. By the time she left Kenji's office that evening, they'd laid the groundwork for something extraordinary. The Waitress Institute for Cultural Medicine would launch in 6 months. Dr. Patterson would lead clinical trials. Dr. Hamilton would train first responders. Iris would create a documentary series. And Rachel would travel the world, finding elders, recording knowledge, preserving wisdom. 3 months later, Rachel stood in front of a packed auditorium at Northwestern University. Medical professionals, nursing students, journalists, and cultural preservation experts filled every seat. Kenji sat in the front row, his throat fully healed now. Next to him sat his elderly mother, who'd flown in from Japan specifically for this event. She'd brought with her an ancient text her father had kept, full of traditional healing techniques she thought would die with her generation. Traditional knowledge isn't superstition, Rachel said, her voice steady and clear. It's tested wisdom. What we call modern medicine is often just rediscovering what our ancestors already knew. She clicked to the next slide, showing her grandfather's photograph. Wei Qin understood that healing comes from many sources. The Wei Qin method works because it combines gravity, positioning, and precise pressure application in ways the Heimlich maneuver doesn't address. Dr. Hamilton stood and took over. We've now successfully used the Wei Qin method in 61 emergency situations where traditional interventions failed. That's 61 lives saved by ancient Chinese wisdom. We're incorporating it into emergency medical training nationwide. The audience erupted in applause. After the presentation, reporters crowded around. One of them asked Kenji, "Mr. Yamamoto, you've donated over $80 million to this institute. Why this cause specifically?" Kenji's answer was thoughtful and emotional. "For 40 years, I built a technology empire by forgetting my roots. I became successful by being American, by looking only forward, never back. I rejected my grandfather's teachings because I thought they were primitive, old-fashioned, useless." He paused, his voice thick. "Then a waitress saved my life using knowledge from a culture I'd dismissed. She reminded me that progress isn't about rejecting the past. It's about honoring all sources of wisdom. My grandfather tried to teach me that. Rachel's grandfather succeeded. This institute ensures that wisdom never dies." Another reporter turned to Rachel. "Miss Torres, you've gone from working tables to directing a major medical research institute. What would your grandfather think?" Rachel felt the familiar sting of tears, but didn't hide them anymore. "He used to tell me, 'Rachel, when you forget where you come from, you lose part of yourself.' I think he'd say this work is sacred. Every time someone dismisses traditional knowledge as primitive or backward, humanity loses a tool for survival. We're building that toolkit back up, one technique at a time." The institute had grown beyond anything Rachel had imagined. She now led a team of 15 researchers documenting traditional knowledge from indigenous communities across 6 continents. They'd recorded over 300 healing techniques, everything from wound treatment to fever reduction to pain management, that were being scientifically validated and incorporated into modern medical practice. But what moved Rachel most were the letters. Thousands of them, from people around the world. An elderly Native American woman wrote, "My grandmother taught me how to set broken bones using oak splints and natural bindings. I thought this knowledge would die with me because my children weren't interested. Now your researchers have documented it. My grandmother's wisdom will live forever." A young man from Nigeria. "My father knows how to treat malaria using traditional herbs. Doctors said it was nonsense. But your institute tested it and found compounds that actually work. You've given my father's knowledge respect." A Vietnamese refugee. "I've been in America 40 years. My children don't speak Vietnamese, don't know our culture. But when your team came to interview me about traditional medicine, my grandchildren listened. For the first time, they were interested in where they came from." These letters reminded Rachel why this work mattered. It wasn't just about saving lives, though that was crucial. It was about dignity, about respect, about honoring the wisdom of people who'd been dismissed as backward or primitive. 6 months after the launch, something unexpected happened. Kenji called Rachel to his office, his voice excited. "You need to see this." When Rachel arrived, she found Kenji's office transformed. Traditional Japanese textiles hung on the walls. The scent of green tea filled the air. Photographs of his family, spanning generations, covered a memorial table. "I've been learning," Kenji explained, gesturing around the space. "Taking Japanese language lessons again. Reading my grandfather's journals. Understanding what I lost." He picked up an aged leather journal. "This belonged to my grandfather. It's full of healing techniques, pressure points, meditation practices. Things he tried to teach me 40 years ago." His voice cracked. "I'm learning them now, Rachel. Finally learning what he tried to give me." "He would be so proud," Rachel said softly. "So would yours," Kenji replied. He pulled out his phone and showed her a video. "Watch this." It was a news report from Japan. A young woman demonstrating the Wei Qin method to a room full of paramedics. The reporter was explaining how this ancient Chinese technique was revolutionizing emergency medicine worldwide. It's spreading, Kenji said, his eyes bright. Not just in America. Everywhere. Japan, China, Europe, Africa. Your grandfather's wisdom is saving lives on every continent. Rachel felt something break open in her chest. A grief she'd been carrying for 2 years finally found its release in tears of joy and pride. That evening, Kenji hosted a celebration at his penthouse apartment. It wasn't the usual business gathering. Instead, it was filled with people like Rachel. Children and grandchildren of immigrants. Indigenous people preserving their tribe's knowledge. Elders who'd finally found someone to listen to their wisdom. Rachel found herself talking to Kenji's mother, Yuki, who spoke through a translator. My husband's father, Kenji's grandfather, he was a healer, Yuki said, her weathered hands gentle on Rachel's arm. A good man who knew ancient ways. He died sad because his grandson rejected everything. But now, she gestured around the room, her eyes wet. Now his grandson honors that wisdom. Teaches it to the world. You gave my son back to his heritage, Rachel. You gave him back to his family. Rachel squeezed Yuki's hand. Your father-in-law and my grandfather, they would have been friends, I think. They are friends, Yuki said firmly. In the place where wisdom goes when we die, they are friends. And they are proud of their grandchildren. Later, Rachel stood at the windows, looking out over Chicago's glittering skyline. Kenji joined her, holding 2 cups of tea. Do you remember what you said to me at the restaurant? He asked. After you saved me? Rachel shook her head. You said, I just did what my grandfather taught me. As if it was nothing special. Kenji smiled. But it was everything, Rachel. You honored him. You remembered him. You kept his wisdom alive when it would have been easier to forget. I couldn't forget him, Rachel said simply. He was the best person I ever knew. Mine too, Kenji said quietly. And now, because you remembered yours, I'm finally remembering mine. They stood in comfortable silence. 2 people from different worlds brought together by crisis, now united by purpose. The Waitress Institute would go on to document over 2,000 traditional healing techniques from 83 cultures. The Waitress method would be taught in medical schools worldwide, saving thousands of lives. Rachel would complete her nursing degree and eventually earn her doctorate in integrative medicine. And Kenji would reconnect with his Japanese heritage, eventually retiring from technology to focus full-time on cultural preservation. But that evening, they were just 2 people honoring their grandfather's memories. 2 people who understood that wisdom isn't measured by its age or its source, but by its ability to preserve human life and dignity. Rachel raised her teacup. To our grandfathers. Kenji raised his. And to the wisdom they gave us. May we pass it on to the next generation, and the next forever. Outside the windows, the city lights sparkled like stars. And somewhere, in whatever place wisdom goes when we die, 2 old men, one from China and one from Japan, smiled at what their grandchildren had built together. Remember, friends, the wisdom of our elders isn't old-fashioned. It's timeless. The techniques our grandparents knew aren't primitive. They're tested through thousands of years of human survival. And when we honor them, when we preserve them, when we pass them on, we keep a part of humanity alive that the modern world desperately needs. What wisdom did your grandparents teach you? What knowledge from your culture might save a life someday? Don't let it die. Remember it. Honor it. Share it. Because you never know when that ancient knowledge might be the difference between life and death. Thank you for reading this story. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it.